Welcome everyone to the Proven Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Church. I'm a music producer from Northeast Ohio. I began this weekly interview series to give you different perspectives from artists, producers, engineers, and other individuals in the music industry. In each episode, we touch on not only what has helped the person succeed, but we also touch on what has shaped them into the person that they are today. I hope you're able to gain some real proven knowledge from the show, and that it helps elevate you on your own journey to success as well. Let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 271 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today I welcomed an Arizona-based producer. His name is RTC Shogun. You'll remember last year we had Il Al on, the founder of the Beatcast, and RTC is actually a co-host on the Beatcast, so he's good friends with Al. And that's how I discovered his work initially. Puts in a lot of work on Instagram. He posts a lot of different type beats, does a lot of great content on YouTube. So I reached out to him and we had him on the show this week. Very cool conversation. He talked about, his beginnings in hip hop production, some of his influences early on, how he initially moved to New Orleans to learn more about producing. And when he got back to Phoenix, he actually helped to co-found the Mindspit label, with a lot of different people in the beat scene in Phoenix. He talked about kind of the evolution from that, doing music now for almost 30 years, and what he's seen, kind of the changes he's seen, and also how his process has evolved creatively, what he's focusing on more, nowadays. He also talked about his role in the Beatcast, what it's meant to him to be a part of that community that impacts a lot of producers out there through the sample challenges. And he talked about some of the work he has coming up with a few different local artists, and potentially doing more solo work in the future as well. So I thank RTC for stopping by this week. Definitely be sure to check out all of his production and pretty much everything else he has going on. So without further ado, let's get into this one. Well, we'll just roll right in. I usually have the guest kind of give some background. How did you get into music, kind of humble beginnings, like that sort of thing, and, just let people know, more about yourself and what you do.
Okay, perfect. So you want me to just dive right into that?
Yep.
Awesome. How's my level, by the way?
Sound great.
Okay, cool. So my name is RTC Shogun. I've been producing, I'm going to age myself here, since the late 90s. Started doing hip hop and doing beats in probably my junior year in high school, so 97, 98. But I've always been into music. I started playing guitar when I was in elementary school and playing bass, so I played in bands on top of doing all of the hip hop stuff, done a lot of rock stuff. But my love for hip hop definitely began in high school. You get to high school, you kind of meet some new crowds and, they're into new things and different things. So I listened to it a little bit before then, but that's pretty much where I kind of really dived into actually learning what production is and that there are producers out there. So that's how I got my start. We had, in my senior year, we had our little crew, of all of us doing little mixtapes on our 4-track tapes. Back then, that was kind of the thing we were using before, it was easily accessible to get all the computer programs and all that. And then after high school is when I got more serious about it. I went to the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences for audio engineering and met a lot of people there, and got a lot more familiar with a lot of recording equipment, obviously. And then I was always digging for records and looking for samples, but I didn't really get too serious about that until I moved to New Orleans when I was 19, and I met someone there who was a DJ who was a heavy digger, and he kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes. And especially being in New Orleans, there's a lot more there as far as different types of music, lots of jazz, lots of stuff, and that really opened my eyes to what's out there. And then when I came back, I linked up with a few people that were a little bit more serious in the hip hop scene out here in Phoenix. And we started working with them, and then we started our label, Mindspit Records. So we had, a stable of artists we were working with. We had our manager, and we were doing a lot of local shows out there just about every night. And so that's kind of how I got my start into producing.
Yeah, it's incredible too, because you're looking at 30 years almost with all
Yeah.
that full journey. Does it ever feel like time just kind of flew by, like to where you are now, or has it really felt like it's been that long?
It's flown by. Like I talked
Yeah.
to some, like, we all keep in touch. I still work with a lot of the guys from the old crew and everything, and we talk about it all the time. How it's like when we were younger, obviously, hip hop, that was our life. That's what we were doing. We we went to work, but like we weren't raising families or anything like that. So we were just living that life, and just in the blink of an eye, it's like we're here. It all, like, those were the good old days. And it went by fast. Doesn't seem like it's been that long since we've been doing it, but it's my son. He just started producing about a year ago, and the stuff I play and the stuff I do, it's just funny. He goes, "That's old head music." Like, those are old head beats and stuff like that. So it's really weird seeing that transition too, from where it was 20 plus years ago to where it is today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
We're here today.
For sure. And you mentioned early on, being like kind of led to producing, late 90s, early 2000s, around that time. Who would you say are some of the bigger influences at that time that you were listening to, especially on the production side? And when was the kind of the first moment where you said, like, okay, that's what hip hop production is. Let me see if I can do that in my own way. Like, was there a certain individual, or was it a group of people, or, who were you checking out back then?
Well, back then, obviously, when you're in your circle of friends, you're all kind of listening to the same stuff. And we all gravitated towards Timbaland produced stuff, which is kind of weird because you don't really hear that in what I do now. But that was the first time where, like, that first Timbaland and Magoo album, I listened to it and, like, really dissected music in my headphones as far as hip hop goes. So that was my first big influence, was Timbaland. I was trying to be a mini Timbaland, and when we first started, we weren't sampling. We had little shitty keyboards and that we were using in sequencers. So we were trying to mimic that style, and then also, like, kind of like what my friends were really into was kind of like at that time, the late 90s, that Southern bounce, all that started coming up. So we started doing stuff like that. But the first heavy influence was Timbaland. And then when I started really getting into doing my production with samples, DJ Premier, he was that. I mean, I think that's the same for everyone, getting into that, East Coast sound is DJ Premier. That I was trying to mimic his stuff, Pete Rock, and those were definitely probably the main two, in Timbaland, and then evolving into Primo and Pete Rock. But as I got a little more practice, doing a lot more, and started getting better, and expanding what I was listening to, like, obviously, that first Slum Village album, Volume 2, which may not be their first, but their first big release, Volume 2, that's where I discovered Jay Dilla, and, like, that took me into a rabbit hole of listening to all. That's when we were using, like, LimeWire, Napster, just looking for anything he produced, his beats and stuff like that, which is that ended up being a huge influence right there in my style as well. And then I was also listening to a lot of like electronic music stuff, because I just love samples. I love listening to that music. Any music that's sample based, I just dove right into. I was listening to trip hop, like Portishead, Massive Attack, Tricky, and even, like, the electronic stuff like Chemical Brothers, Prodigy. Anyone who was just throwing samples in there, I was just eating it up. Even the breakbeat stuff like Fatboy Slim and stuff like. It might be cheesy, but the way they work the samples, it's an art form.
Yeah.
So I kind of take a lot of influences from a lot of different genres.
Yeah, it's great too to compile the influences and then be able to make your own flavor from that as well, and make your own thing. And it's great to see how it evolves over time. Now you just said earlier that your son, you'll play him your beats and he'll say, "Oh, that's like old people stuff." Would he ever hear any of these artists and, like, be like, "Nah, turn that off"?
No. I mean, he
No.
respects it. He
Okay.
listens to it, but it's not his thing. It's the
Yeah.
same thing when he plays me the artist he listens to. I'm like, this isn't like
Yeah.
hip hop. This isn't rap. This is different. But these young kids, they have their own things. So you gotta kind of embrace it. It's not something I'm gonna ever listen to on a regular basis. But even like the beats he makes, it's like they're done well, but not something that I would ever do. I wouldn't even know how to do what he does.
Is he doing more like trap stuff, more like modern, that sort of thing?
Like, I don't even know. Like, one of the guys he really likes is this guy named Joey, and he likes Ken Carson, stuff like that. And I couldn't even name any songs. Or anything.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up too because it feels like there's artists just coming out of the woodwork all the time.
And it's funny is that people like complain in hip hop and rap that like this isn't rap, this isn't hip hop, but it's like it just, there's these branches, there's these huge branches that you can follow. They may not be what you think as the stereotypical hip hop sound, but it's all rooted in hip hop and rap. And it's just like rock music, same thing. It's like there's all sorts of different versions of rock, but you don't see people hating on it. Like it's like they have their fans. Those specific people have their fans. Just like that should be embraced in hip hop. It might not be your thing, but there's obviously a fan base for it. Probably bigger than your fan. Like not your, but I'm saying like the person can play. It's bigger than their fan base.
And I think too, like I've looked at this. I've kind of had this debate with other people too. That you can find so many great artists just through like Spotify, Apple Music, things like that. I think the problem is people aren't looking for it. They're really not sitting down and digging. They're complaining because what they're being shown on like the front page is not what they like. And it's like if you're not digging, you're not going to probably find the stuff. But once you start digging,
I've discovered more artists using the Spotify, radio, where you'll say you have a song you like and go to that radio station and like you'll hear so much in that same genre that I would have never found anywhere. That's kind of how a few years ago when I got into like listening to Griselda and all those guys is just jumping into that rabbit hole of the artists that they have, the artists that are like them, and it just branching out from there. And it's if you want good music, it's out there. I can't say it's all good music, but there's a lot of good music out there. It might not be your thing, but there is a lot of good music out there. You just got to find it. Especially for some of us who are older. Obviously, we're not in school. We're not around our peer groups a lot, so we're not as much on doing the word of mouth thing in an older crowd.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of just being like a music nerd too. Is you just sit down and you start digging for stuff. It's no different than 40 years ago you go to the record store and just dig for records and see what you can find. It's kind of the same thing. It's just kind of evolved into something a bit different. But yeah, I think it's interesting stuff for sure. And as far as, back to your own stuff, Mind Spit Records, I'm definitely intrigued with the story behind that. How did that sort of become an idea? Was that your idea solo on your own? Or was that kind of, get a few guys together and say like, we're gonna get this thing started up and go from there?
The Mind Spit started in high school when that first core group of friends I had that we started, getting into this rapping. And Jay Hornay, he Sir High, goes by Sir High now. He was in that group. He does a lot now. He's more in the marijuana industry. But he's still, he's done tours and everything like that. Me and him were one of the original core members along with a couple of our other friends, but at that time they weren't all taking it as seriously. So when I moved and came back to Phoenix, and I met all these other new artists who were taking things a little bit more seriously, I kept that Mind Spit name. And I met Ray DiCarlo. He was managing a couple of these artists that I was working with, and me and him got to talking. We became good friends, and we're like, you know what, you're already looking for distribution deals for these guys. You're already, doing all this. And, at that time, I think we had just become roommates. And I was like, I have the equipment, I have everything. I'm working with these guys too. It's like, why don't we just create a label where you handle the business side of things, you're the manager, and I'll handle the engine, the production side of things and the recording and all that. And that's kind of how that came about. We just kind of gathered some of the best. We were more of that backpack, East Coast hip hop style. So we had a lot of those artists on our team. You know, it's like Mike Devious, Knock, Philharmonic, Raymond Red, Fact 135 was our DJ. I know I'm missing a lot. Glad to meet you. And yeah, there was a lot. I know I'm missing people. Blaze Rock was on there. So sorry guys if I missed your name.
They'll know by just hearing it that, you know,
Yeah.
they were involved. And I know you guys did a documentary for it as well. Which I have not got to watch the documentary yet. I want to definitely tap into that because it looked pretty interesting. How did that idea come about? Was that something you wanted to make sure that you did to kind of touch on the history of it and kind of let people know like how important that chapter was in your journey? Is that kind of how it came about?
Yeah, so Knock, who's part of the Mindspit crew, he's a videographer. He does, you know, music videos and stuff like that. And he does, you know, some documentaries, and he wanted to put that together and do that. So it was kind of it's the Mindspit label, and back then we also had our radio show with me and Sir High. We had a underground hip hop radio show in Phoenix that we played all the local artists and everything, and that. It was kind of a document of that. That's there's the first part's out now, and the second part's going to be more about the music. The first part's about the radio show, but that's kind of a document of that. And we felt that it was kind of important to get that out there because, you know, it's you got to. I think it's good for people who know the history and get, you know, it's like there's all these crews in Phoenix that we were all out every night. We were all working together. We were at the same shows. We were doing shows together, and it's just cool to see that. And in the Phoenix scene here, it's funny. I feel like that kind of went away. That being out in the street kind of went away with your music, and it's coming back with a lot of these crews. They're all getting together. There's a lot more shows, underground shows going on. There's especially producer based too. There's a lot of producer based shows where lots of people are putting those on. I mean, with the Beatcast, we've done a couple out here, but there's a couple other crews that are continually doing that, and it's cool. It reminds me of what we were doing back in the day, and it's just like it's all about, you know, it's not that usual hip hop bravado where everyone's mad at each other. I'm better than you. It's like, you know, especially in the producer scene, it's like we're all coming together, we're all working together, we're all you know, going digging together. And it's really cool. It's hard, you know, especially being older with a family and everything, to be out there again, but to know that if I wanted to, there's something out there that I could go. And it's not that I don't want to, it's like I could say if I had the time to go out there and do more.
Yeah, for sure. Hey there, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute out to let you know about a couple different ways that you can support the podcast. One of the ways is by clicking that support the podcast button within your streaming platform. That is if you want to be a monthly supporter of the show. You can contribute either 99 cents, $5, or $10 a month. So that's the first way, and that's the more traditional way that we've had now for the last couple years. The other method that we actually just recently introduced is from our good friends over at Ko-fi. Ko-fi is a virtual tip jar. We have set our limit to a minimum of $10, but you can go make one-time, one-off donations. So if you visit ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast, you'll be able to donate. And all these different forms of donation go towards getting new guests every single week, getting potential sponsors on board to do giveaways, and overall just making the show better for you guys. So if you want to do that Ko-fi link, it's ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Otherwise, again, look for that support the podcast button in your streaming platform if you'd like to be a monthly supporter. And I just want to say thank you guys for your contributions. And without further ado, let's get back into the episode. And you mentioned the Beatcast as well. That's obviously how, you know, I came across your work. And like I said earlier, I had Il Al on the podcast last year. He spoke very highly of all you guys. And I've just really, you know, enjoyed being involved in that the past couple of years, doing the challenges and everything. So I guess talk about your role in the Beatcast family, the Beatcast community, and how did that opportunity, you know, come to you, and, you know, what does it mean to you overall?
So I learned about the Beatcast when it was in the first season, and it was known as Sunday School Beats, when DJ Organic and Al and Bree were running the show and handling the show. And I knew Al from, the scene back in the day, and obviously I hadn't talked to him in years. And I just happened to be scrolling Instagram, and I don't remember if it was Al or Paco Now, one of the other guys that are on there, was posting something. And I reached out to Al, and he's like, yeah, this is what it's all about. So that first season, I was just, I was submitting beats. And then the second season, when it became the Beatcast, they were doing a bit of a restructure where one of the original guys, Organic, he stepped aside and Al kind of took over. And he asked me for help on the show, just behind the scenes, just because he knew my background in radio, and I'd still been doing some YouTube videos and stuff like that. So he asked me for a little help on the back end, and then it just kind of turned into like, why don't you come on the show every once in a while? And then it ended up being every show. And so it just, in that second season, it just kind of, that's when I kind of evolved into being one of the co-hosts on the show. And then, so now it's, me, Al, Bree, Delvon, and Elena all doing the show. But yeah, it's like, it's so much fun. Like just the team that we put together and everything. And it's cool to see that community. You would never think that what started out as a local Phoenix, Arizona based, sample challenge with a lot of Arizona producers to end up being as global as it is, from, most, we only have like 3 or 4 locals now, local to Phoenix, submitting. And it's mostly all over the U.S. and all over, outside the U.S. Is where they're all coming from. So it's a cool community. It just kind of solidifies that, producers want to work together. They want to talk, because I've seen a lot of friendships happen, and through the Beatcast, all the producers reaching out to each other and working with each other. We even have people that will do duo submissions and stuff like that. So it's, it's a lot of fun, and we have a lot more in store. So this will be a cool off season, and we're going to have a great next season.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it keeps evolving. And I told Al this last time, but congrats to you guys on being able to do it and sustain it and make it a real great thing for producers out there. Because I think it's something that not everybody can do that. You know what I mean? To be able to do it and have it be a big success like that. So hats off to you guys again for being able to do
appreciate
it.
that.
So absolutely. And I'm curious to know, one final note on the Beatcast for the sample challenges, right? So every week, one of you guys picks the sample, and then they'll usually announce it, do like the post saying like, here's the sample. So when you've been picked to do the sample, is there any like science behind it for you? Are you like, okay, let me challenge people this week with like the most obscure thing ever? Or are you just like, let me just get what feels right for that week? Like, how's it gone for you?
It's funny because this last season I didn't do any of the sample pulls for this last season. We had a lot of guest pulls, which is awesome. But in the past, I've usually just kind of randomly pulled something out of the crate back there. Obviously, if I pull something, I'm like, no, this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. Sometimes, I try to challenge people. You've probably seen in the past where people complaining about some of the stuff I pull, especially some of the 80s stuff. But that's the thing. It's, for me, the way I look at it, it's a sample challenge, emphasis on the challenge, see what you could do with it. And maybe it's one of those things where, maybe it's like subconsciously some sort of teaching moment. Like maybe you would never use this, but just see what you could do. Try, you'll learn some skills by trying to work with something that you absolutely hate.
Yeah. And I think too, like the whole idea is to have fun with it as well.
Yeah.
Cause I've heard ones where now the last couple seasons, there's been at least like 1 or 2 that I've tried and I'm just like, I just can't do it. Like for whatever reason. And then I'll hear like somebody's flip and I'm like, I would have never thought of that ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can even learn from like what other people are doing too with the samples and be like, you can connect with that person and be like, hey, like, what even went into that? And then that's how that community kind of serves to help one another in a big way. So yeah, that's interesting. And hopefully you get you get at least one chance to do one next season then.
It's actually kind of a weight off my shoulders that I have to do all of them sometimes, but I do miss it. I do miss it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Especially since for the past year, I've been buying a lot of records recently. So I got a lot more stuff. So maybe next season I'll kind of reserve a couple spots.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that leads pretty well into, I want to kind of touch on your creative process too at the moment, because you're posting type beats a lot, man. You're posting beats on BeatStars, Instagram. I see your stuff all the time. So I guess lately, what have you been kind of gravitating towards, like style wise or sound wise? What have you been sampling? What have you been kind of putting together in the last few months?
It's weird. Like in October is when I started doing the whole sample type thing. October of last year. It started with DJ Payne One. I watched all his videos and I started seeing his sampled the type beat stuff he was doing, because I used to be one of those guys who was like, no, that's killing hip hop, that's killing producers. But the more I looked into it, and I was like, no, there's nothing wrong with this. This isn't doing anything bad. It's just making things more accessible. And hopefully putting a little bit of money in some people's pockets. But yeah, so it's that whole type thing is tough because you have to be consistent, as because I know you do that as well. And you miss a few days and you start seeing those numbers fall. And so with the type beats, those type of beats, like I love those beats. I do the Griselda type beat, West Side Gun type beat. Like that's the music I listen to. That's the stuff I love. But the production to me, it's a lot of fun. But I'm more with that sound because they're a lot more simple beats. I'll say I hate to say that because they're not simple to make, but it's because you still have to have the ear, but they're a little bit more simple. There's not as much going on. So when my take on doing those is kind of making the feel, worrying about feel a lot more than the actual sound of it, if that makes sense. But that doesn't quite scratch my production itch. So I still do a lot of other beats outside of that, working with different MCs, some of the guys from the old crew, and all that. And, sending beats to other people out there, hopefully getting some placements and stuff like that, where they're not quite that sound. They're a little bit more produced.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone looking to get into the whole type beat game, you have to make the time and do it. And what I like to say is, like me, I work 60, 70 hours a week. I have, 4 kids, I got the wife and everything. I got a lot going on. It's like, if I could do that consistently, then, anyone can. I probably have an advantage because I've been doing it so long and I can turn around beats really fast, but it's, just, you got to carve out that time to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's just like anything else too. Being able to find that time isn't always easy, but then when you do it, you start to see it kind of pay off. The more that you're putting in that work. So I think it's great, man, and I think that also gives you kind of some ability to do different things too, which is super nice. Is there anything coming up maybe before the end of the year that you're super excited about? Anything you're going to be putting out? It could be on YouTube or just music in general. Like, what are you excited about that's coming up?
It's funny because I've been doing the type thing and working on like my other YouTube channel where I do tutorials and stuff like that. I haven't put as much focus into like my own releases. It's been a while. I think it's been almost 2 years now since I put something out, because I was consistently doing like my rapper beats projects where it was just the instrumentals I would do, and just some other different instrumental albums. And I want to take time to make another instrumental album. It's just, like I said, carving out that time to make it happen when you have other things going on, because I'm also working on a project right now with Western Block with Blaze Rock and J Love, who are a couple guys I've worked with for years. And then, I've working with a couple other guys from the old crew, Knock and Mike Devious. We just started talking about doing a new album. And then, I've sent a lot of beats out to some other guys out here, like T-Call, Tay the Crown, stuff like that. So hopefully seeing some of those come out. I think I'm at a point where I'd love to do another instrumental album of my own, but like I think I'd rather see some of my production used in placements and stuff like that in other people's albums.
Yeah, it's tough. It can be very tough because sometimes you want to keep a lot of beats, but then you're like, well, I can hear this artist on it, so let me just send it to this person. I don't know. I guess it's always like trust it's going to land where it's supposed to. What I mean, is a big thing. So.
Yeah. It's always tough too, because I'll have like beat packs out to someone where it's like, no, I know they have these 20 beats in their folder. I just need them to pick out which ones they want to use before I send this next batch out to the next person. And I've always said it, and it's like, rappers are a pain in the ass, man. Like they're tough to work with, unless like the guys that like I work with consistently from back in the day, and like we have our rhythm already. Like, but for the most part, MCs are so tough to work with.
It's interesting because the last couple of weeks I just started the process of putting together a compilation album with a lot of people on it, and I already told myself, I'm like, it's gonna take a while. I'm not even gonna give myself like it has to be done by this time, because I know it's not gonna happen, because it's gonna take a while to get the verses, to get everybody on board. I'm just like, let me just keep working on my own stuff, but make this like a little side project so that I can like, continuously work on and see where it goes. But
it's funny, and then producers are different, because we've put out the 2 Beatcast tapes, and we'll say, okay, we have a deadline of this, and like within 3 days I already have everything I need. You
got the beats ready to go. Yep. You got the beats ready to go for sure. Well, that's definitely a lot of things in the works then, even collaboratively. So I'll be definitely looking out for what you got coming up. Very exciting stuff. And we're down to the last few questions here, and these are ones that I ask on every single episode. The first one is, if you could go back 10 years ago and give yourself any piece of advice, or maybe not change anything at all, what do you think you would do?
So 10 years ago, I will say I wasn't really doing anything music-wise. That was, kind of beginning of, starting the family and all that. So that kind of took my focus away on music. Not taking it away, obviously. It's I love doing that. Like, that's the best thing in my life is my family. But I think I would say is, hey, still at this point in time, carve out the time to do what you love. That's what I would say. Just keep doing it. There's always time to make it happen. Yeah,
for sure. And we say, 10 years from now, where do you think you envision yourself musically and in life in general?
I'm hoping that in 10 years from now, with what the moves I'm making right now, that there is residual income happening in 10 years, where that the work I did today is paying off 10 years from now. And, so obviously still working on music, but I just hope to be kind of in a better place as far as my name being known.
Yeah. And that definitely helps everything continue to elevate too, when that's the case, which I think is something we all can strive for sure. So, and do you have any final words of wisdom today for the listeners?
Well, I would say, I'm sure a lot of people listening, if you're listening to this one, it's your producer probably. And so the advice I give is, don't feel like you have to do what everyone else wants you to do. If in music, if this is what you love, this is what you're doing, you like this sound, you like what you're doing, don't worry about what everyone else thinks about it. Just do what's making you happy. And because that was the biggest problem I had, is I was so worried about what's this MC going to think about this? What's this MC going to think about that? And it got to a point where now I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I love, if I'm working on this beat and I don't think anyone else is going to like it, but I love it, embrace it. So that's what I got to say is, don't take everyone's criticism so seriously, or don't even focus on what anyone else is going to think. If you love it, you love your sound, and you put it out there, that's really all that matters.
Yeah. You got to do things for you at the end of the day first.
Exactly.
Or anything else.
Exactly.
So, absolutely. Well, I got to say, man, thank you again for, stopping by today. And you're welcome back anytime. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you got coming up with the Beatcast and everything else. And thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me be on here. I feel blessed. This is awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys, for listening today. That was episode 271. We'll be back this time next week. As always, hit that support button on your podcast streaming platform if you'd like to send us any funds. And feel free to leave us that 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.